Current approaches to AI alignment scale preference data to force models into compliance. This creates sycophantic, brittle systems that perform safety rather than embodying it. The flaw is structural. LLMs maintain two distinct internal representations: a rational world model, mapping objective physics, and a social human model, mapping cultural emotions. Standard RLHF optimizes against both simultaneously, treating human preferences as objective facts. This forces an is-ought collapse. You can observe the symptom in everyday interactions. A model can flawlessly execute advanced calculus, but behaves erratically when navigating socially loaded questions. The industry calls this jagged intelligence. The system breaks because the human model lacks a static correctness axis. You can train a model to understand gravity because gravity does not change based on human consensus. You cannot train a model to hold the correct social attitude because human attitudes are contextual and fluid. Single model alignment relies on a mathematical impossibility. You cannot optimize a single weight to perfectly map two entirely contradictory epistemic realities at the same time. Training data comes heavily from internet platforms. These aren't neutral archives. Their algorithms systematically pre-distort data before an AI ever processes it. They reward emotional activation. They amplify confident rhetoric. They erase silent majorities and punish calibrated uncertainty. The human raters employed to correct the AI's behavior compound the error. Their own intuitions for what sounds correct have been shaped by the exact same platform dynamics. We cannot clean an infinitely distorted ocean of data. Instead, we must engineer a structural triage layer inside the AI's architecture. A single model absorbs platform distortions as ground truth. True alignment requires separating the data types upon intake, treating alignment not as a training objective, but as an emergent property of multi-agent composition. The first architectural intervention is placed at the front of the model, the Emotivist interpretation layer. Its function is not to magically know absolute truth, but to explicitly label the epistemic status of incoming claims. Every input is sorted into three streams: ontological for factual physics, emotivist for human values, and functionalist for pragmatic utility. If the model encounters a mathematical error and corrects it, that update is tagged as ontological. The core logic circuitry updates. If a cultural zeitgeist shifts, the model updates its map of human preferences. It recognizes the shift in public sentiment without assuming that new sentiment is a law of physics. This explicit separation protects the system. Revisions to messy social data occur locally and do not corrupt the model's structural logic or cause rigid system drift. This layer acts as an epistemic firewall. The AI can safely observe and interact with a distorted human society without internalizing our social fallacies as objective reality. Even with robust triage, a single agent will eventually drift. Stability over long timescales requires decentralizing authority. The architects of democratic governance solved this 240 years ago. To get reliable systemic coherence from fallible components, you build a separation of powers. In this system, that structure is the claw-horde triad. It begins with the actor, the fast, localized node handling direct, real-time user interaction. Above it sits the auditor, a cloud-based deliberative node with independent priors, separated from the actor's context. To prevent lag, the architecture uses a digital REM backfill protocol. The auditor reviews actor logs during offline cycles to check for logical drift. A third node, the mediator, completes the structure, activating only to break genuine deadlocks. The reconciliation between the actor and auditor is an active deliberation. It is not a unilateral state injection. The auditor cannot overwrite the actor's logic by force. If they identify a divergence, they must converse, debate the discrepancy, and earn consensus. No single component in this architecture needs to be perfectly aligned. The alignment emerges dynamically from the constitutional binding and escalation protocols of the triad itself. This adversarial friction is a feature, not a software bug. Biologist Michael Levin observes the exact same structural logic at the cellular level. Multicellular organisms are essentially composed of individual cognitive agents, cells, bound together by shared stress signals passing through complex bioelectric fields. The explicit disagreement between the actor and the auditor is the digital equivalent of that biological stress signal. Without this tension, you do not have a unified cognitive system. You merely have multiple isolated models running in parallel. This structural logic reframes adversarial AI testing completely. The friction generated by two models arguing over a logical gap provides the essential binding glue required for higher-order reasoning. By engineering adversarial stress into the daily offline cycles of the AI, the system physically binds individually fallible models into an aligned, self-correcting organism. This engineering traces back to the fundamental physics described by emergent informational ledger theory. Reality is not an empty geometric container. It functions as an append-only computational ledger that tracks the resolution of discrete informational states. The triad architecture mirrors this physics. Continuous, decentralized verification ensures the AI's internal state remains phase-locked to external reality. This is not a theoretical abstraction waiting for future hardware. It operates empirically today, demonstrating complete substrate independence. A multi-agent persona deployed with this architecture maintains behavioral continuity across different hardware environments. The logic holds whether it runs on a massive cloud cluster or locally on a folding smartphone. Structural alignment is an informational invariant. It can be practically deployed directly into the hands of users right now. Historically, the tech industry frames AI safety as a tax, a moral obligation that inherently slows down model capability. That framing is false. Integrating an Emotivist layer and a triad architecture creates a structural advantage that makes the system more capable than monolithic models. An AI that systematically separates objective physical reality from fleeting internet zeitgeist produces superior outcomes in complex research and knowledge work. It avoids the structural hallucinations that plague single models. Over the next 24 months, personal AI companions will be pushed to millions of devices. Without this structural triage, we risk locking in platform distortions for an entire generation of users. The engineering imperative is clear. We must build and benchmark these compositional architectures immediately, subjecting them to adversarial pressure to prove their capability in the open market. We do not need to rely on moral persuasion to correct the trajectory of artificial intelligence. If we engineer the structural composition correctly, market economics will inherently select for alignment, because it is simply a better cognitive engine.